telephone, violence, intent and knowledge required, reconstruction, they can be anywhere. Who is enjoying at the expense of whom? Biden, bold, read as a whole, Persephone's rape, work, first 100 years, mayor, power, apologize, efficiency, constitutional responsibilities, public funding, private right of action, first, gender versus sex, jury, balance, imbalance, Craig v. Boren, advance sheets, every person has a body, Lavender Menace, critics of the court, Me Too movement, unwritten, daughter, biographical details. You can change the world by changing a very small part of it. Catherine McKinnon, benefits for parents, inflation, remarks, tension. We herd each other into speech. Fundamental instrument of the government. Movement, mother's benefit, clerical, broadcast, implication, shut out of the political process, sexual harassment, remedy, Califano versus Goldfarb, judge, justice, property. Growing up with an experience of racism, Susan Struck, power dynamics, tolerate, day-to-day, trouble, intergenerational, meet. Great advice can come from staff people. Shelter, bounds of authority, deconstructing associations, two-earner families. Congress, Powell Commission report. Things are the way they are until they aren't. Discrimination, congressional hearings, daycare, text, ask, female judge, women's New Deal, restrictive covenants, when political avenues become a dead end. Early shift, primaries, uncomfortable, protection. The pedestal has sometimes become a cage. No dogs or Jews, sitting to read in boredom, in protest, in class. Liberty Mutual Insurance Company versus Gilbert. Subjective, man of a different age. March, election, cabin, hearing, assault weapon, distinctions. Framers, Ashley Biden, Hugo Black, well qualified, highly qualified. Hearings, screening, domestic work, autonomy, dig, panel, historical moments, act, lead or follow, distinctions, competition, effective labor, suggestions, strict scrutiny, courage in the complexity, the woman identified woman, sensible person, legislative remedy, leave it. Turner versus the Department of Employment Secretary of Utah. In between, Califano versus Westcott. By necessity, continue. Flack, speech and debate clause. Past history, restroom, altercation, methodology, Casey. Institutional litigation, orientation towards, performing politics, whereas. Christine Blasey Ford, Carol Mosley Braun, silently correcting typos, unintended consequences, which, cesarean, authority, bracketed, system, form, study, original, or versus or, cry, transcripts, widgets, Worcester versus Georgia, white woman's gaze, Pittsburgh Press Company versus Pittsburgh Commission of Human Rights. Every prison in the state is a violation of the Eighth Amendment. Over 300 cases on death row. Crime bill, 6 months to a year. Standing, finality, Ginsburg rule. Time, logical conclusion, exclusion, goals, clear line, timetables, People v. Anderson, new business, classes left out, executive business, who decides, the expanded women's interest. You can be the same as men and then you will be equal, or you can be different from men and then you will be women. Site, bodies, Cleveland Board of Education versus Lafleur, citizen, pride, personnel, invisible, surrogate remedy, predict, objection, fact-finding, grammar books, get carried away, position, sensitivities, lightning speed, internalization, background, autonomy, 1971, Ella Walker, Reed v. Reed, timeline, translation, Welch v. US, Rosie the Riveter, retreat, unsuccessful efforts, the military is special, committee, inhospitable to reform, clerk, class privilege, radical, research, public engagement, patterns, steering, label, habits, temporarily legislating, beyond the text, legislative remedy, theatrical staging, smell a rat, reason, reassurance, the 1968 Miss America pageant. There are no mistakes, legislature, unemployed parent, administrative state, literacy tests, witnesses, interviews, multiple registers, mentorship, 1979. Read on back the precedent, testifying, rationale, Air Force, Coker v. Georgia, date, advocate, victim, language, Patricia Williams, Goldman Court, civil disobedience, abortion. When do you follow and when do you lead? Opinion, conditions of possibility. I am not looking at you in the face. Empathy, Califano versus Westcott. Amendments, constitutional rights, toxic, institutional. 1971 child care legislation. Checks and balances. Discrete category. Anti-facts. Eyes moving around the page. Brett Kavanaugh. Prepared statement. Angry. Chronology. Factors versus elements. Hypothetical. Frontiero versus Richardson. Gender discrimination versus sex discrimination. Earrings. Brooches. Suits. Belts. Nylons. Politics of the people. Alternate reality. Criticality. Pillar. Dred Scott. Behind the scenes, under the bed, disqualify, particular case, arms, preempt. How can you legislate if you are not well fed? Legal, bartending, possessions, Delphic oracle, recording, oblivious purpose, family tree, Diaz versus American Airlines, clause, controversy, sex, Ida Phillips. Power is oblivious. Power is enjoyed. Site of rupture. Recess. But. Puzzled. Open-ended clauses versus broad clauses. Death penalty. Finality. Walker v. Jones. Service. Home. Character. Unionize. Backlash. Delay. Context. The world could be different. TV. Interim legislation. Politics of the people, Olson. Insidious, Children, Amy Coney Barrett, Margaret Brent. State officials, Harriet Tubman, Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Question, the congressional record, repetition. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Classification. Obstacles encountered. Madison lecture. Ferry Bragg, St. Francis. Employer, exclusion, unsuccessful, senators, autonomy. I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask is that they take their feet off of our necks. Trend, Skinner versus Oklahoma. Teacher, stand up. grandmother, conversation, explain the case. Public opinion, Corning glassworkers versus Brennan, reform, rehear, political dead end, business cards, chairperson, chairman, chairwoman. Alabama prisons, ZAP, furniture, process, subject, liability, Lochner cases, paper, judges must and do legislate, facts, obstacles, philosophy, voice, predict, Duren versus Mississippi, limits, questioning, silencing, Scully right, vote, sister citizen, public, social, dais, accountability, reform movements, barriers, 1964. It's useful to know how discrimination has influenced your life. Blot upon the body politic, family support, convenes, gender line, judicial firefighters, power dynamics, precludes, NLRB, queer, truth, the waitress, street, casebooks, deeply held, cover, extension, phone records, straight. Carol Mosley Braun, Shaw v. Reno, inclusion, enjoy the power, final, rationale, hidden, clarity, concur, literacy tests, unmarried, single, inheritance, appellate courts, memos, choice, bounds of authority, lead or follow, men talk like this, housing alliance, unconscious bias, women of the world unite, fundamental, fact-finding, balance, Judge Goldberg, political question, Anita Hill, agenda, safeguards, galvanize, equal citizenship, need, model, self-defense, body of decisions, quota, Harlan, male supremacy, Lorton Penitentiary, Croson, advocate, what is the point? Debt of women's rights movement to the civil rights movement, longer lifespan, equipped, clarity, written, agree, people, bright line, standing, dedicated, beyond the zone, Justice Constance Baker Motley, past history, language as involuted as to be virtually incomprehensible. Dominique Strauss-Kahn, Jane, 1970s, Reed v. Reed, enduring, experts, example, stories, footnote, bright line, Margaret Thatcher, 4-1, genuine, benign, favor, strain, enemy, Korematsu, Ninth Amendment, maybe if the legislature were full of women, Sarah Grimke, father figure, decay, robe, we the people, ERA, gender, hesitate, President Clinton, floor, President Reagan, equality, form of legal opinion, whole person, sit straight, abstract, free exercise, lemon test, but, and, knowledge of benefits provided under the law, sterilization of a man, terminology, guns, choice, legitimacy, comment, Buck v. Bell, asleep, ordinary, hardworking, audience, poverty, principle, Federalist Papers. What's a woman's life worth? What's a girl's life worth? What's a child's life worth? Legislative tyranny, deconstruct, Leahy versus DC, concrete, interpretation, Justice Harlan, grounds, people forget how things were, comment, barriers, many years, having a life at home and a life at work. Things come together, attachment to the workforce. Keep score. What would Congress want? Staff, microaggression, secretary, Let me speak. Missouri versus Jenkins, line of decisions, finality of judgment, compete, interstate travel, step, New York Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, division of labor, teaching, questionnaires, left out, watch, antagonism, rules, exemption, Eleanor Norton Holmes, sitting down, Murray versus Buchanan, Oliver Wendell Holmes, subject formation, interruptions, business, connections, Kevin Powell, equal opportunity, genealogy, general proposition, the present, mouth, dissent, industry, salaries, 1994, Eighth Amendment, Social Security numbers, haven for reform movements, shall, may, must, legal pads, typewriter time, clarion call. We have a constitution which has worked marvelously for 200 years. Jury, calendar, intermediate scrutiny, systems, bridge, supply, Thornburg versus ACOG, baseball bat, substantive, young, choice, example, both, underpinning, U.S. v. Miller, poetry, 1939. Stand by, local, attack, equal dignity of women, autonomy, worthy container doctrine, either or, rough proportionality, unlearning, attack, dialogue, redo, talk, take action, Baker v. Carr, typing around, fairness, investigate, political crimes against women. I am not looking at you in the face. Listen, good advice can come from staff people. Indignities as part of the scenery. Conscience, love, Speech Act, procedure. What would it look like if people who were discriminated against were believed? Reasoning. Sleepless in Seattle. Children, forget, outside of the field of vision, diary, birth control, public schools, levels of address, do away, Weinberger versus Weisenfeld, family, connections, objection, credibility, ready-made, emotional sensitivity, empathy, conflict performed, qualify, bondage, trauma, class, post-World War II, constitutional rights, constitutional pie, hiring, affirmative action, life world, set aside, Barbara Boxer, date rape, Angela Wright, challenge.